Lagos did not care who you were. It did not care if you wore a three-piece suit or a faded blouse that had been washed too many times. It did not care if you sat behind tinted glass or stood under rain that fell like it had personal anger. Lagos only cared that you moved, that you survived, that you found a way to make today pay for tomorrow. That was why Zainab Adesina stood by the roadside at Ojuelegba before the sun had fully agreed to rise. Her slippers were worn thin at the heel. Her fingers were stiff from carrying a plastic tray covered with a clean white cloth. Under the cloth were loaves of ajege bread stacked like small, warm promises. Some were plain, some were sliced. A few had a slight burnt edge because the bakery's oven had its moods, the same way the city did. Zainab did not complain. Complaining did not pay rent. She adjusted her scarf, wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, and lifted the tray higher on her head. She had learned how to balance it the way you learn how to balance grief. Slowly, quietly, with practice. Agege bread, fresh bread, soft bread, she called, her voice weaving into the noise of Danfo conductors shouting destinations. Oshodi, Oshodi, 2 more, enter, enter. CMS, CMS, no go dull. A bus splashed dirty water near her feet. She flinched, but did not step back. If you stepped back too often in Lagos, you ended up at the back of life. A man in a cheap polo shirt pointed at her bread without looking at her face. How much? 600 for 1, 1,000 for 2, Zainab replied. He hissed. You people have turned bread to gold. Zainab forced a small smile. Oga, everything is gold now. He bought 1 loaf anyway, shoved the money into her palm, and walked away already chewing, as if he was angry that hunger had forced him to pay. Zainab watched him go, then counted the remaining loaves in her head. She needed to sell at least 20 before noon if she wanted to buy Gary and tomato. If she sold 35, she could add beans. If she sold everything, she might be able to pay part of the school levy that had been chasing her since last term. Zainab had a daughter. Her daughter's name was Moreniki. Moreniki was 8 years old and had eyes that asked too many questions. Mummy, why do some people have big houses and some people are sleeping under bridge? Mummy, why is Uncle Sola always angry? Mummy, when will I have my own shoes that are not second-hand? Zainab always answered with patience, but each question sat on her chest like a stone, not because Moreniki was wrong, but because Zainab had no answers that could change reality. A horn blared close by. A black SUV eased through traffic with the calm arrogance of a man who believed he owned time itself. Zainab did not need to see the logo to know it was expensive. Lagos had taught her the language of wealth, even if she could not speak it. Inside that SUV sat a different kind of Lagos. Not the Lagos of hustle and grit, the Lagos of power, the Lagos of silence, the Lagos of men who could make one call and change the direction of someone's entire life. The man in the back seat stared out through the tinted glass, though no one outside could see him clearly. His name was Obinna Okoye, and in the world that mattered, Obinna Okoye was not just rich. He was a myth with a bank account. At 37, Obinna had already built what newspapers called an empire. He owned logistics companies, construction projects, real estate blocks in Lekki and Ikoyi, and a tech investment firm that people whispered about like it was magic. When Obinna walked into a room, men with titles became careful with their words. When his name showed up on an event guest list, the organizers exhaled like prayer had been answered. He had everything, except peace. He sat with his suit jacket open, tie loosened slightly, a gold watch on his wrist that could buy Zainab's entire street. His phone buzzed again. Another message, another problem, another meeting. His PA, Kemi, sat beside him with a tablet in hand, already reading out his next schedule as if time was a runway, and he was the only plane that mattered. Sir, The meeting with Senator Danladi is 9:30 at Echo Hotel. After that, the Lekki project inspection by 11. Then you have lunch with Chief Bamidele by 1. Obinna did not answer. Kemi paused. Sir? He blinked slowly. Cancel lunch. Kemi's fingers froze mid-scroll. Sir? Chief Bamidele is expecting you. I said cancel it. Okay, sir, she replied quickly. But her voice had that careful tone people used around Obinna. The tone that said, I will obey you, but I am afraid of your silence. Obinna shifted in his seat and stared out again. The city moved around him, chaotic and loud, yet inside the SUV there was quiet. A bubble, a false peace. He hated it. He hated how insulated it felt. He hated how he could glide past suffering like it was scenery. Obinna had once been the suffering. Once, he had been the boy selling sachet water at mile 2 with a tray on his head, sweating under the sun while wealthy men drove past without seeing him. Once, he had been hungry enough to drink water just to trick his stomach into silence. That was the part of his story the newspapers did not print. They preferred the version that made success sound clean. Obinna's phone buzzed again. This time, the name that appeared on the screen made his jaw tighten. Chief Nnamdi Okoye. His father. Obinna did not pick. Kemi noticed and looked away. Everyone knew Chief Nnamdi's calls came with pressure. The SUV slowed at a junction. Traffic tightened like a fist. Outside, Zainab moved between cars, selling bread with quick steps. She knew which windows might open and which ones would never, no matter how polite she sounded. Some drivers looked at her like she was a nuisance. Some looked at her like she was invisible. A few looked at her like she was human. Zainab approached a silver Corolla, smiled at the woman inside. Madam, fresh bread. The woman shook her head without speaking, eyes forward. Zainab moved on. A Danfo conductor shouted something rude at her. She ignored it. She had learned to ignore a lot. But as she walked, her breath tightened a little. She told herself it was nothing. Lagos air was always doing something to people's chest. Dust, exhaust, stress. Still, her vision blurred for half a second. She stopped beside a concrete pole and steadied herself. The tray felt heavier than usual. Her shoulders ached. Her stomach was empty, but she had not eaten because she had promised herself to save money. Mummy, please buy meat pie for me one day, Maraniki had said the night before, her voice small in the darkness. Zainab had swallowed hard and said, by God's grace. Now, standing at Ojuelegba, she wondered if grace was something you earned or something you simply begged for. A sharp wave of dizziness hit her. Her knees weakened. She grabbed the pole, but her fingers slipped on damp concrete. Her tray tilted. The bread shifted under the cloth. And then she saw it. The black SUV. It had stopped not far from her, trapped in the same Lagos traffic that trapped everyone. The tinted window in the back seat was half lowered, just enough for air. Zainab did not know why she looked. Maybe because something about the stillness of that car felt different. Maybe because her body was searching for something to hold on to, even if it was just a distraction. She looked through the gap, and the man inside looked back. Even from a distance. Obinna Okoye's face carried the kind of quiet power that came from winning too many battles. His skin was clean, his beard neat, his eyes sharp. But when his gaze met Zainab's, something flickered across his face. Not curiosity, not annoyance, recognition. Zainab's heart skipped. She stared harder, struggling through the dizziness. No, it could not be. The city had played tricks on her mind before. Hunger could turn strangers into familiar faces, yet the feeling would not leave. Obinna's hand tightened on the edge of the window. He leaned forward slightly. Kemi noticed. Sir, is everything okay? Obinna did not answer. His eyes stayed on Zainab, and then Zainab's knees finally gave up. The tray slipped. The cloth flew back. Loaves of bread tumbled, bouncing on the wet road like scattered pieces of her life. Zainab fell forward, trying to catch herself, but she hit the ground hard, palms scraping against rough tar. Cars honked. Someone shouted, "Madam, shift na!" A bus driver swerved, missing her by inches. Obina's breath stopped. For a second, all he saw was a flash of another time. A girl on a roadside, rain, bread, a voice crying his name. A past he had locked away with money and pride. He shoved the door handle. Kemi's eyes widened. "Sir, wait. The security—" Obina stepped out anyway. He stepped into the noise, into the smell of fuel and wet asphalt, into the gaze of Lagos people who immediately noticed when a rich man did something unexpected. His bodyguards moved fast behind him, but Obina was already walking toward Zainab, his expensive shoes splashing through dirty water. Zainab tried to push herself up. Her head spun, her palms burned. Her breath came out shaky. She lifted her face. Obina reached her and stopped. For a moment, they both stared. Zainab's lips parted, and the name came out like a whisper she did not plan. "Obina?" The sound of his name spoken in that voice hit him like a slap. He crouched slowly, eyes searching her face as if he was afraid of what he would find. "Zainab," he said, his voice low, almost broken. "Is it you?" Around them, Lagos paused just enough to watch. A billionaire kneeling in traffic, a bread seller on the ground, two lives colliding in the open, with too many eyes and too much history. And somewhere in that moment, something unexpected began to wake up. Not just in Obina, in Zainab too. Because as she stared at him, dizzy and trembling, one thought rose louder than the horns. If this was truly Obina Okoye, then the life she had been running from had finally found her. The rain started as a whisper, just a soft drizzle that barely touched the heat of the road. Lagos rain always did that first, as if it was asking permission before deciding how violent it wanted to be. By the time Obina Okoye's bodyguards formed a loose circle around him and the fallen bread seller, the rain had made up its mind. It came down harder. Zainab felt it on her face as she lay half-seated on the road, one palm pressed against the ground, the other clutching her wrapper as if it could hold her dignity in place. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. The world tilted slightly to the left. Obina reached out instinctively, his hand hovering near her shoulder then stopping mid-air. He did not know if touching her would make things worse or better. "You fainted," he said quietly. "Can you stand?" Zainab swallowed. Her throat felt dry, like she had been shouting for hours even though she had barely spoken. I think so." She tried to push herself up. Pain shot through her wrist. She hissed softly and sank back. Obina's jaw tightened. Without thinking any further, he slipped his jacket off and spread it on the wet road beside her. The sight alone drew murmurs from the small crowd that had begun to gather. "Madam, sorry," someone said from a distance. Na big man be this," another voice whispered. Zainab noticed none of it. Her eyes were fixed on Obina's face. Not the face from magazines, not the billionaire face. The younger face she had not seen in almost 10 years was trying to fight its way back. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice thin. "You shouldn't see me like this." Obina exhaled slowly. "Zainab, I didn't plan this." She let out a weak laugh that surprised even her. "Did you plan anything in your life, Obina?" The words landed heavier than she intended. Silence fell between them, thick and awkward. Kemi shifted uncomfortably behind him. The bodyguards exchanged glances. Lagos traffic began to crawl again, impatient with emotions it could not understand. Obina crouched fully now, ignoring the water soaking into his trousers. "Let me help you," he said. Zainab hesitated. She had survived this long by not leaning on anyone, especially not on ghosts from her past. But her body betrayed her. She nodded. Obina slid one arm carefully behind her back and supported her elbow with the other hand. He was gentle, as if she were made of something fragile that might shatter if handled roughly. The moment she leaned into him, something broke open inside her chest. Not loudly, quietly. Her forehead brushed against his shoulder. His scent hit her memory without warning. Clean soap, something woody, familiar in a way that hurt. She steadied herself quickly and pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm fine," she said, though her legs trembled. "You're not," Obina replied. "You're shaking." Rain soaked his shirt now. He did not seem to notice. He glanced at the scattered loaves on the road. Some were crushed. Some floated sadly in shallow puddles. Zainab followed his gaze and her eyes filled instantly. "My bread," she whispered. She tried to move toward them, but Obina held her back gently. "Zainab, please." "That's my money," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "That's food. That's everything." Without another word, Obina stood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Kemi," he said, his voice firm now, the billionaire tone slipping back in just enough to command order. "Get cash. A lot. And get someone to pick every single loaf." "Yes, sir." She moved fast. Obina turned to one of the bodyguards. "You, help her collect them. Carefully." The man nodded and stepped forward. Zainab watched, stunned, as people who looked like they belonged in boardrooms and private lounges began picking her bread from the ground as if it mattered. She grabbed Obina's sleeve weakly. "Please don't do this. People are watching." "I know," he said. "Let them." The rain intensified, drumming against the roofs of cars. A bus driver leaned out and shouted, "Olga, make we move now!" Obina ignored him. He knelt again, closer to Zainab's level. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. Zainab's lips trembled. "Tell you what?" "That you were struggling like this." A bitter smile crossed her face. "And say what? That Obina Okoye, future big man, should come and save me from selling bread?" He flinched. "That's not fair." She looked at him then, really looked. The years had sharpened his features, but the eyes were the same, still searching, still restless. "What was fair," she said softly, "was when you promised you would come back." The words hung between them. Rain ran down Obina's face, indistinguishable from sweat. "I tried," he said. Zainab shook her head. "You disappeared." "I was sent away," he replied. "My father." "Your father always had power over you," she interrupted, her voice rising despite herself. "Even when it was my life, he was stepping on." The crowd grew quieter, sensing something important was happening. Kemi returned, holding an envelope thick enough to draw attention. She paused when she saw the tension. Obina took it without looking. He handed it to Zainab. "Please," he said, "take it." Zainab stared at the envelope like it might burn her. "No." "Zainab, I didn't collapse so you could pity me. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" she asked sharply. "Guilt?" The word cut deep. Obina's voice softened. "Maybe, but also responsibility." She laughed again, but this time it broke into a small sob. "You don't get to feel responsible now," she whispered. "Not after all these years." Her shoulders shook. The strength she had carried all morning finally cracked. Obina reached out and held her trembling hands, not caring who saw. "I never forgot you," he said, "not once." She looked up at him through tears. "Then why does my life look like this?" He had no answer, only regret. A police officer approached cautiously, unsure how to handle a billionaire kneeling in traffic. "Olga, we need to clear the road." Obina nodded slowly. He turned back to Zainab. "Come with me," he said. "Let me take you somewhere safe." She hesitated, fear and familiarity warring inside her. Just to the hospital, he added. Please. Zainab closed her eyes briefly. In her mind, Mareniki's face appeared. Mummy, will you be okay? She opened her eyes and met Obina's gaze. Just the hospital, she said firmly. Nothing more. A faint, relieved smile touched his lips. Thank you. As they stood together, rain pouring, bread gathered, traffic resuming, Lagos exhaled and moved on. But for Obina Okoye and Zainab Adesina, the moment had already landed like a bomb. The rescue was not the unexpected part. The unexpected part was this. The past was not finished with them, and it had chosen the busiest road in Lagos to make sure they could not ignore it. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and impatience. Zainab sat on the narrow bench in the emergency ward, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her damp wrapper clinging uncomfortably to her legs. A nurse had cleaned the scrape on her palms and wrapped her wrist, muttering something about low blood sugar and exhaustion. Have you eaten today? The nurse had asked. Zainab had looked away before answering. Not really. The nurse sighed the way Lagos nurses did when they had seen the same story too many times. Madam, you cannot pour from an empty body. Zainab nodded, though she had been pouring from empty for years. Across the waiting area, Obina Okoye stood near a wall, phone pressed to his ear. His voice low and controlled. He had changed into a spare shirt one of his drivers fetched, but the rain had already soaked into his bones. Yes, I know, he said. Push it to tomorrow. A pause. I don't care if they're upset. Another pause. No, I'm not coming in today. He ended the call and leaned his head back against the wall, eyes closed briefly. This was not part of the plan. His entire life ran on plans. Yet here he was in a public hospital off the mainland, waiting beside the woman he had loved and lost, while deals worth billions waited politely for his attention. He opened his eyes and looked at Zainab. She was staring straight ahead, refusing to look back. That hurt more than he expected. When the doctor finally came out and confirmed she would be fine after some rest and glucose, Obina exhaled in relief he did not bother to hide. Thank you, he said, shaking the doctor's hand firmly. Zainab stood slowly, testing her balance. I'm okay now, she said, already reaching for her scarf. I should go. Obina frowned. Go where? Home. You should rest. She gave him a tired look. Rest doesn't pay rent. He stepped closer. Zainab, please. The word please sounded strange on his tongue. She turned fully to face him now, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue. You've done enough, she said. You stopped. You helped. Thank you. That's where this ends. Obina shook his head. I can't just walk away. You can, she replied quietly. You're very good at that. The accusation hung heavy between them. I didn't choose to leave you, he said. But you did leave, she countered. And you stayed gone. His jaw clenched. Do you think it was easy? He asked. My father threatened to cut me off completely. School, connections, everything. And what was I supposed to do? Zainab shot back. Wait! Her voice cracked. I waited, Obina. I waited until people started laughing at me, until my mother asked me if I had been foolish to trust you, until I couldn't afford to wait anymore. He stepped back, stunned by the weight of her words. You could have sent word, she continued. You could have said something, anything. I was trying to build something, he said. For us. She laughed softly, shaking her head. For us? Look at us now. She gestured at her bandaged hand, her worn clothes, the plastic bag holding what remained of her bread. This is my life, she said. This is what building looks like when you don't have a safety net. Obina felt something twist painfully in his chest. He reached into his pocket again. Zainab saw the movement and stiffened immediately. No. I just want to help. I said no. Her voice was firm now, the way it got when she spoke to Moreniki. I will not be another charity case in your redemption story. That's not fair. Neither was disappearing, she replied. A tense silence settled. People passed them, glanced, moved on. Obinna lowered his hand slowly. What do you want from me, Zainab? He asked, genuinely lost. She looked at him for a long moment. I want you to go back to your life, she said finally. And let me go back to mine. That's impossible, he said. She tilted her head. Why? Because I've seen you now. And? And I can't unsee you, she scoffed. You think seeing me once gives you ownership? No, he said quickly. It gives me responsibility. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You do not get to decide when responsibility begins, Obinna Okoye. The use of his full name felt like a line drawn in sand. He swallowed hard. What about Moreniki? The name slipped out before he could stop it. Zainab froze. Her entire body went still. Why did you say that name? She asked slowly. Obinna's heart pounded. I heard you say it once. Today. When you were on the ground. You were mumbling. Her eyes narrowed. She's my daughter. I know. Then why are you talking about her? Because she looks like you, he almost said. Because I counted years in my head and felt sick. Because my mother once hinted and I was too afraid to ask. Instead, he said carefully, because if you have a child, you shouldn't be out there alone. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You don't get to worry about her. She might be my... Don't! Zainab snapped. Don't finish that sentence. The pain in her voice stopped him cold. That conversation is not happening here, she said. Or now, or ever. She turned away, fighting tears. I am not a mistake you fix with money. Obinna stepped back, the rejection hitting deeper than any business loss ever had. Zainab, she picked up her bag. I'm leaving. I'll take you home, he said quickly. No. Let me at least arrange transport. I know how to get home, she replied, her pride flaring. She walked toward the exit, her steps unsteady but determined. Obinna followed her out into the corridor, stopping a few feet behind. He wanted to grab her hand. He didn't. Zainab, he said one last time. I'm not done. She paused at the doorway. Without turning around, she said, I am. And then she walked out, back into the city that had never stopped demanding from her. Obinna stood there long after she was gone. For the first time in years, money felt useless. He had saved her life, but he had failed to reach her heart, and that hurt far more. As he finally turned away, one question echoed in his mind, refusing to be silenced. If walking away was truly what she wanted, why did it feel like losing her all over again? Zainab did not make it far. She had barely stepped out of the hospital gate when the sky, already heavy, finally broke open completely. The rain came down in sheets, loud and angry, turning the road into a blur of headlights and splashing tires. The small Kiki parked nearby sped off immediately, its driver unwilling to risk flooded roads for a single passenger. Zainab stood under the shallow hospital awning, clutching her bag to her chest. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Low battery. She sighed, closing her eyes for a moment as fatigue washed over her again. Her wrist throbbed. Her head still felt light. Pride pushed her forward, but her body refused to cooperate. Behind her, Obinna had followed at a distance. He had told himself he would let her go. He had told himself he would respect her wishes. But the rain, the way she swayed slightly on her feet, the fact that she was about to step back into a city that had never been kind to her, pulled him forward again. Zainab, he called. She stiffened but did not turn. I'm fine, she said before he could speak. You're not, he replied gently. And you know it. She turned then, rain dotting her scarf, irritation and exhaustion written clearly on her face. "What do you want, Obinna? For you not to collapse again on the road." "I've been collapsing quietly for years," she said. "You just happened to see this one." He stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "Let me take you home," he said again. "Just today." She laughed softly. "So you can see where I live? So you can feel worse? So I can make sure you're safe?" "I am safe," she snapped. Then her voice softened. "I've learned how to be." A thunderclap interrupted them, loud enough to make her flinch. The rain intensified, forcing both of them to step fully under the awning. For the first time since the roadside, they were truly stuck together, too close to ignore each other, too exposed to pretend nothing existed between them. Obinna leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. "I'm not here to judge you," he said quietly. "That's good," Zainab replied. "Because I didn't invite you." He nodded. "Fair." Silence settled, the kind that pressed in on old memories. "I thought you hated bread," Zainab said suddenly. Obinna blinked. "What?" "You used to complain every time my aunt made ajige bread," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "You said it was too heavy." A surprised laugh escaped him. "You remember that?" "You were dramatic about it," she replied. "You said it would kill you one day." "And now you sell it," he said softly. "Yes." Their eyes met. Another silence. "I didn't choose this life because I enjoy it," Zainab said. "I chose it because it was available." "I know," he said. "Do you?" she challenged. "Because knowing is different from understanding." He looked away, rain streaking down the glass beside them. "I understand more than you think," he said. "I just escaped earlier." She studied him closely then. "You don't look like someone who escaped," she said. "You look like someone still running." The words landed. Obinna let out a slow breath. "Maybe." A black SUV pulled up suddenly, stopping close to the awning. One of the bodyguards jumped out, holding an umbrella. "Oga, the roads are getting worse," the man said. "Traffic is locking up everywhere." Zainab immediately stepped back. "I'm not going." Obinna raised a hand to stop the bodyguard. "Give us a minute." The man hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. Zainab folded her arms. "I already said no." "I know," Obinna said, "but listen to me for just 1 minute." She hesitated, then sighed. "1. The rain is not stopping anytime soon," he said. "Your body is tired. Your wrist is injured. If you step out there now, you'll be risking your health." "And your solution?" she asked. "Come with me," he said calmly. "Just until the rain eases. I won't ask questions. I won't push." She raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to believe I owe you more than pressure." She considered him, truly considered him, weighing pride against practicality. "What about my daughter?" she asked. The question made his chest tighten. "I'll make sure you get back to her today," he said carefully. "I promise." Her eyes searched his face for lies. She didn't find any. Finally, reluctantly, she nodded. "Fine," she said, "but this doesn't change anything." "I know," he replied. They walked toward the SUV together, the rain drenching them despite the umbrella. Inside the car, warmth enveloped them. The contrast was jarring. Zainab sat stiffly on the far end of the seat, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the window. Obinna sat opposite her, giving her space. The car pulled into traffic, moving slowly through flooded streets. For several minutes, neither spoke. The city blurred past, horns muffled by rain. "You've grown," Zainab said quietly at last. He smiled faintly. "So have you." She glanced at him. "Not the same way." "No," he admitted, But strength is strength. She shook her head. Strength shouldn't cost this much. No, he agreed. It shouldn't. The SUV suddenly jerked to a stop. One of the bodyguards spoke from the front. Oga, road ahead is flooded. We might be stuck for a while. Zainab closed her eyes briefly. Obina leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Well, he said softly, almost amused. Lagos has spoken. She let out a tired laugh despite herself. Looks like we're stuck. Yes, he replied. Together. The word lingered, forced by rain, forced by traffic, forced by a past that refused to stay buried. And as the car idled in the downpour, neither of them realized just how much that forced stillness was about to change everything they thought they had buried for good. The rain refused to let up. It drummed steadily against the roof of the SUV, a relentless rhythm that matched the tension sitting between Obina and Zainab. Traffic had completely stalled now. Engines were turned off. Drivers leaned out of windows to argue, to pray, to laugh helplessly at Lagos being Lagos. Inside the car, time slowed. Zainab shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The warmth that had first felt like relief now made her too aware of how tired she was. Her wrist ached again, dull and persistent. Obina noticed. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "A little." "Let me see." She instinctively pulled her hand back. "It's fine." He did not push. Instead, he reached into the side compartment and brought out a bottle of water, handing it to her. "Please," he said, "drink." She accepted it reluctantly, taking small sips. Silence returned. Outside, rainwater crept higher along the curb. "You never answered me," Obina said softly. "About what? About why you didn't tell me?" Zainab stared at the condensation on the window, watching it trail downward like tears. "There are things," she said slowly, "that you only tell people who stay." He closed his eyes briefly. "Zainab, I didn't leave because I wanted to." She turned to him sharply. "Then why did you leave?" The question had been waiting for years. Obina leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. "My father found out about us," he began. "Not just that we were dating, that I was serious." Zainab's jaw tightened. "He always knew." "He didn't know how serious," Obina replied. "Not until he came to my hostel unannounced." Her breath caught. "What did he say?" "He said I was throwing my future away," Obina said quietly. "That marrying you would close doors forever. That no serious family would respect me." Anger flared in her eyes. "Because I was poor?" "Because you were not from the kind of background he could control," Obina said. "He said love was a luxury men like us could not afford." Zainab let out a hollow laugh. "Men like you." "He threatened to withdraw everything," Obina continued. "School fees, accommodation, even my documents. He said I would crawl back within months." "And did you?" she asked bitterly. He shook his head. "No. I left the house that night." Her eyes widened slightly. "I slept at a friend's place for weeks," he said. "I tried calling you. Every day." Zainab turned fully toward him. "No one ever called me." "I know," he said. "Because he blocked my number. He changed my phone. He sent me out of the country under the pretense of a scholarship." Her lips parted in shock. "I was young," Obina said. "Angry. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, I could build something strong enough to come back for you." "And you didn't think to send a letter?" she whispered. "I did," he said. 3. She shook her head slowly. "I never got them." He nodded. "I know now." Her hands trembled slightly. "You know what I got instead?" she asked. He looked at her, afraid. "I got rumors," Zainab said, "that you had moved on, that you were engaged to someone else, that you had forgotten me." That was never true. But it felt true, she said, because silence can feel like abandonment. The words sliced through him. I waited, she continued, her voice cracking. I waited until my mother fell sick, until I needed money for drugs, until your name became something people whispered like it was forbidden. She swallowed hard. I went to your family house once. Obina froze. You did? Yes, she said. Your father's driver sent me away like I was dirt. Obina's face darkened with rage. I didn't know. He told me to forget you, she said. He said you were never coming back, that I should be grateful I wasn't arrested for trespassing. Obina's fists clenched. I left that day, she continued, and I promised myself I would never look for you again. The rain outside seemed louder now. And Mereniki? Obina asked carefully. Zainab stiffened. She is not a bargaining chip, she said. I know, he replied gently. I just need to understand. She hesitated, then sighed deeply, the fight draining out of her. I found out I was pregnant 2 months after you disappeared, she said quietly. The words landed heavy. Obina felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. I thought about telling your family, she continued. Then I remembered the look in your father's eyes. Her gaze hardened. I chose my child over humiliation. He nodded slowly, tears burning behind his eyes. I raised her alone, Zainab said. I worked anywhere that would take me. I learned how to survive without hope. Her voice softened. But she is happy, she is smart, and she doesn't know hunger the way I did. Obina swallowed. Does she know about me? No, Zainab replied firmly. She knows her father is someone who couldn't stay. The accusation stung. I wanted to stay, he said. But you didn't, she replied. And intentions don't raise children. The car fell silent again. Traffic remained unmoving. Minutes passed. Obina finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I would like to know her. Zainab shook her head immediately. No, not as a savior, he said quickly, as a man who made mistakes. She looked at him, eyes full of conflict. You don't get to enter her life because you are ready now, she said. You enter only if I believe you won't disappear again. He met her gaze steadily. I won't, she scoffed. You said that once. I know, he admitted. And I failed. A long pause. But I'm not that boy anymore, he continued. And I'm not asking today. I'm asking someday. Her shoulders sagged slightly. The weight of truth pressed on both of them now. No money could undo it. No apology could erase it. The SUV finally lurched forward as traffic began to crawl again. Zainab looked away, blinking back tears. Take me home, she said softly. Obina nodded. Okay. As the car moved, something fundamental had shifted. The story was no longer about a rescue on the roadside. It was about a life split in two by silence, pride, and fear. And now that the truth was out, neither of them could pretend they were strangers anymore. The question was no longer whether the past mattered. It was whether the truth would bring them together, or finally tear them apart for good. Zainab's street was quiet in the way only working-class neighborhoods became after heavy rain. Puddles sat in uneven patches along the roadside, reflecting flickering generator lights from nearby houses. The SUV looked out of place the moment it turned in, its polished body catching curious glances from neighbors who had learned long ago to mind their business, but never their curiosity. Obina asked the driver to stop a few houses away. I don't want attention, Zainab said quietly. I understand, he replied. He stepped out first, opened the door for her without thinking, then stopped himself, unsure if that small gesture would feel like pressure. She stepped down on her own. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The air smelled of wet earth and fried onions from a nearby kitchen. Zainab adjusted her scarf and pointed. That one. Obina followed her gaze to a modest two-room building with peeling paint and a small veranda crowded with plastic buckets. It hit him harder than any accusation had. Not pity, perspective. "This is home," Zainab said, her voice steady. "It's not much, but it's ours." "It's enough," he said sincerely. She studied his face to see if he was lying. He wasn't. She hesitated, then said, "I need to check on her." "I'll wait here," he replied quickly. She nodded and walked toward the house. Obina remained by the SUV, hands in his pockets, heart pounding. Moments later, the door opened again. Zainab stood there, uncertain. "She's awake," she said. If you want to say hello." The invitation, fragile as it was, made his breath catch. "Only if you're sure," he said. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Obina walked in. The room was small but clean. A thin curtain separated the sleeping area. A single bulb lit the space. On a small mattress sat Moreniki. She looked up, her eyes curious and alert. "Mummy?" she asked. "I'm here," Zainab replied gently. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Moreniki said, then glanced at Obina. "Who is that?" Zainab swallowed. "A friend." Obina crouched slightly to her level. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Obina." Moreniki studied him the way children did when they sensed something important. "You're tall," she observed. A surprised smile tugged at his lips. "So I've been told." She smiled back. Something loosened in his chest. "Did you bring bread?" she asked innocently. Zainab laughed softly. "You and bread." Obina glanced at Zainab, then back at Moreniki. "I didn't bring bread today," he said, "but I can bring some next time." "Okay," she said seriously. "But soft ones." "Only soft ones," he promised. Zainab watched the exchange quietly, her heart aching and warming at the same time. They sat together for a few minutes. Moreniki talked about school, about her favorite subject, about how she wanted to be a teacher because teachers didn't shout as much as conductors. Obina listened like every word mattered, because it did. When Moreniki yawned, Zainab gently tucked her in. "Say good night," she prompted. "Good night, Uncle Obina," Moreniki said. The word uncle landed gently, not accusing, not demanding, just open. "Good night," he replied. They stepped outside again, closing the door quietly behind them. The generator down the street hummed steadily. For a moment, neither spoke. "That was kind of you," Zainab said. "Thank you for trusting me," he replied. She nodded. "Just for tonight." "That's enough," he said. They stood under the dim streetlight, the rain finally easing completely. "I used to imagine what our life would have looked like," Zainab admitted suddenly. "If things had been different." "So did I," he said. "And?" she asked softly. He met her eyes. "I think it would have been simple, and honest, and loud in all the ways that matter." She smiled faintly. "You always liked loud." "Only when it was real," he replied. A comfortable silence settled. Something fragile but real hung between them now. Not promises, not forgiveness. Connection. Obina cleared his throat. "May I come by again?" She hesitated, then nodded. "We'll see." He smiled. "I'll take that." He stepped back toward the SUV. Before getting in, he turned. "Zainab," he said, "thank you. For today." She folded her arms loosely. Today was unexpected. He nodded. "Yes." As the car drove away, Zainab watched until it disappeared from sight. For the first time in years, her chest felt lighter. Inside, Moreniki stirred and murmured something in her sleep. Zainab lay down beside her daughter and stared at the ceiling. Hope was a dangerous thing. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel foolish. It felt impossible. And somewhere across the city, Obinna Okoye leaned back in his seat, replaying the sound of a child's voice calling him uncle. He knew with absolute certainty that this fragile peace would not last. But for tonight, it was enough. And sometimes, healing began with moments like that. The peace did not survive the night. It rarely ever did. By morning, Lagos had returned to itself. Horns blared, generators roared. People rushed past one another with the same urgency that left no room for tenderness. And somewhere between dawn and breakfast, reality found Obinna Okoye again. It found him in the form of a phone call. He was seated at the dining table in his Ikoyi home, staring at untouched food, when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen made his shoulders stiffen. Chief Nnamdi Okoye. He hesitated. Then he picked up. "So," his father's voice came through, calm and sharp at the same time. "I hear you caused a scene yesterday." Obinna closed his eyes briefly. "Good morning to you too." "Don't play smart," Chief Nnamdi snapped. "My friends are calling me. A billionaire kneeling on the road in traffic with a bread seller?" Obinna's jaw tightened. "Her name is Zainab." Silence, then a low laugh. "So it's her." Obinna's blood ran cold. "You knew." "I never forget problems," his father replied. "I just thought you were smarter than to reopen old wounds." "I didn't reopen anything," Obinna said. "Life did." "You have no business going near that woman again," Chief Nnamdi said flatly. "Do you hear me?" "I'm not a child anymore." "No," his father agreed. "You're a man with assets, with enemies, with a reputation to protect." Obinna leaned forward, anger flaring. "She's not a liability." "She is a reminder," Chief Nnamdi shot back. "And reminders weaken men." Obinna's voice hardened. "She has a child." Another pause. "Yes," his father said slowly. "I am aware." The words hit like a punch. "You knew?" Obinna whispered. "I suspected," Chief Nnamdi replied. "And I made sure it never became your concern." Obinna stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "You robbed me," he said, his voice shaking. "You robbed her." "I protected you," his father countered. "From foolish sentiment." "Sentiment!" Obinna laughed bitterly. "You destroyed lives." Chief Nnamdi's tone dropped. "Listen to me carefully. You will stay away from her. If you don't, I will make her life very uncomfortable." The threat was calm and very real. Obinna ended the call without another word, his hands trembling. Across the city, Zainab was having her own morning. She was tying Mareniki's hair when her neighbor, Auntie Bose, leaned over the low fence. "Zainab," she called. "Is it true?" Zainab sighed inwardly. "Is what true?" "That big man that dropped you yesterday," Auntie Bose said, eyes shining. "They say he's some billionaire." Zainab's fingers paused mid-braid. "People talk too much," she replied carefully. "They're saying you're his wife," the woman continued, "or his side thing, one of the two." Zainab's stomach dropped. By midday, the whispers had spread. By afternoon, they had grown teeth. Mareniki came home from school quieter than usual. "Mummy," she said softly, "someone said my daddy is rich." Zainab froze. "Who said that?" "A girl in my class," Mareniki replied. She said her mummy heard it. Zainab knelt in front of her daughter, forcing calm into her voice. "Listen to me," she said gently. "People like to talk. That doesn't make it true." Mareniki frowned. But Uncle Obinna looked rich. The name landed heavy. "Yes," Zainab said slowly. "He is." "Is he my daddy?" Mareniki asked. The question Zainab had feared for years had finally arrived. She opened her mouth. No words came. Later that evening, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Zainab Adesina," a woman's voice said coolly. "This is Mrs. Okoye." Zainab's heart stopped. I think we need to talk. I don't think we do, Zainab replied, finding strength she didn't know she had. Oh, we do, the woman said. Before things get messy. The call ended. Zainab sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. This was why she had said no. This was why she had tried to walk away. Her door knocked sharply. She opened it to find Obinna standing there, breathless, eyes frantic. We need to talk, he said. Her chest tightened. So do I. He stepped inside. The rumors, he began. I warned you, she interrupted. I warned you what would happen. I didn't know my father would. You never know, she said sharply. That's the problem. Your life is too big for us. That's not true. My daughter was questioned in school today, Zainab said, her voice breaking. By children. Obinna's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. She shook her head, tears spilling now. I can't do this. I won't put her through what I went through. I won't let anyone hurt you, he said desperately. You can't stop them, she replied. You couldn't stop them then. The words cut deep. I love you, Obinna said suddenly. Silence. The room felt too small, too fragile for such a confession. I never stopped. Zainab's heart screamed yes. Her fear screamed louder. Love is not enough, she whispered. Not against your world. She stepped back. You need to leave, she said, before this gets worse. Obinna stared at her, devastation written across his face. If I leave, he said, I might not come back. She nodded, tears running freely. Then go. He hesitated. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed softly behind him. Zainab sank onto the bed, sobbing quietly so Moreniki wouldn't hear. Across the city, Obinna drove aimlessly, rage and grief tearing through him. For the first time in his life, he understood something terrifying. Money could build empires, but it could not protect the people you loved. And somewhere between pride, fear, and old power, everything that had begun to heal shattered. If you were Zainab, would you protect your child by pushing love away, or would you fight a powerful family for a second chance? The city felt heavier after he left. Zainab noticed it in small ways at first. The way the room seemed quieter at night. The way Moreniki asked fewer questions, watching her mother with eyes that understood more than they should. The way hope, once stirred, did not settle back into silence easily. Obinna Okoye, meanwhile, sat in a hotel room he did not recognize as his own. He had not gone home. Home had too many voices, his father's, his mother's silence. The walls of Ikoyi that echoed power but never peace. So he stayed at a quiet hotel overlooking the lagoon, staring out at water that reflected nothing clearly. He replayed everything. The rain, the bread. Zainab's voice saying his name like it still belonged to him. Moreniki's small smile. Then the threat, the pressure. The look on Zainab's face when fear finally outweighed longing. His phone buzzed constantly. Calls from board members, messages from aides. Another call from his father that he did not answer. He turned the phone face down. For the first time, Obinna asked himself a question he had avoided his entire life. Who am I when I remove fear? Not the billionaire, not the son, not the project, just the man. And the answer terrified him, because the man wanted one thing. Zainab. Not ownership, not control, presence. Across town, Zainab sat on the edge of her bed while Moreniki slept. She watched her daughter's chest rise and fall, slow and steady. I did the right thing, she whispered to herself. She repeated it until it sounded true, but the ache did not leave. Her phone vibrated beside her. Unknown number. Her heart jumped painfully. She let it ring. It stopped, then vibrated again. This time a message appeared. I won't fight you. I won't force my way into your life, but I won't disappear again. I am here when you're ready. Obinna. Zainab stared at the words. They did not demand. They did not plead. They waited. Tears slid down her cheeks. That was the difference. The boy she had loved had promised the future. The man was offering the present. Her phone buzzed again, this time with another message. If you decide that the safest choice is for me to step back completely, I will. But I need you to know this was never a mistake to me. You were never a mistake. She covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing silently. Love had come back to her life wearing patience, and patience was far more dangerous than passion. The next morning, Obinna made a decision. He walked into his father's office unannounced. Chief Namdi looked up from his desk, irritation flashing across his face. This is not a good time. It's the only time, Obinna replied calmly. They stared at each other, father and son, power measuring power. You will leave her alone, Obinna said. Chief Namdi laughed. Or what? Or I step away, Obinna said. From the companies, from the name, from everything you think you control. The room went still. You wouldn't, his father said. I already have, Obinna replied. I resigned from the board this morning. Silence. Chief Namdi stood slowly. You are choosing a woman over legacy. No, Obinna said. I am choosing integrity over fear. You will regret this. Maybe, Obinna said, but it will be my regret. He turned and walked out. For the first time, he did not look back. That evening, Zainab received a knock at her door. She froze. Her heart knew before her mind caught up. She opened it slowly. Obinna stood there. No bodyguards, no suit, just him. I won't stay if you ask me not to, he said immediately. I just needed to see you once more. Zainab searched his face. Something had changed. He looked lighter, less armored. What did you do? She asked. I chose, he replied simply. She stepped aside without speaking. They sat across from each other, the space between them trembling with unspoken truths. I won't ask you to forgive the past, Obinna said. I only ask to be accountable for the future. Zainab's voice shook. You don't know how hard it was to survive without you. I know, he said softly. And I'm sorry I wasn't there. Silence stretched. Moreniki deserves stability, Zainab said, not chaos. She deserves honesty, Obinna replied, and consistency. She looked at him sharply. Can you promise that? I can promise effort, he said, every day. She closed her eyes. The choice stood in front of her, terrifying and bright. Safety without love, or love that demanded courage. She thought of her daughter's smile, of her own loneliness, of a future where fear no longer made decisions for her. She opened her eyes. You don't enter our lives as a hero, she said. You enter as a man willing to stay. He nodded. That's all I want to be. A soft sound came from the room behind them. Mummy? Moreniki's sleepy voice called. Zainab turned instinctively. Obinna stood slowly. Moreniki peeked around the doorway, eyes landing on him. Uncle Obinna? Yes, he replied gently. She looked at her mother. Is he going away again? The question pierced straight through Zainab's heart. She knelt and held her daughter's face. No, she said firmly, not if he wants to stay. Moreniki turned back to Obinna, studying him seriously. You have to keep your word, she said. Obinna knelt too, meeting her gaze. I will, he said, even when it's hard. She nodded, satisfied. Zainab watched the exchange, something in her chest finally loosening. The choice had been made, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. Morning arrived softly. Not with drama or announcements, but with sunlight slipping through thin curtains and the distant sound of children laughing on their way to school. The rain from days before had washed the streets clean, leaving the air lighter, as if Lagos itself had decided to give them space to breathe. Zainab woke before anyone else. She lay still for a moment, listening. Moreniki's steady breathing came from the mattress beside her. From the small sitting area, she could hear the low hum of the kettle Obina had put on, careful not to wake them. The sound did something to her chest. It was ordinary, and that was what made it powerful. She stepped out quietly. Obina stood by the small counter, sleeves rolled up, concentration etched on his face as he tried to make tea with unfamiliar utensils. He turned when he sensed her presence. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. For a moment, they just looked at each other, not as a billionaire and a bread seller, not as victims of the past, just two people standing in the same morning. "I hope I didn't overstep," he said gently. "I just thought—" "Thank you," she interrupted. "For staying." He nodded. "I meant it." They sat together on the edge of the bench, sipping tea in silence. The quiet no longer felt tense. It felt earned. Later that morning, Moreniki woke fully, her energy returning quickly. She watched Obina carefully as he helped Zainab pack her school bag. "You're still here?" she observed. "Yes," he said, smiling. "I am." She crossed her arms. "For how long?" He thought about it. "As long as your mummy allows me," he said honestly. She nodded, satisfied with the answer. Zainab watched from the doorway, emotion tightening her throat. That afternoon, Obina did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked back to Ojwalegba, not in an SUV, not with security. He stood where Zainab used to stand, watching women balance trays, shout prices, dodge cars. He spoke to bakery owners, to small traders, to people whose lives moved at street level, and quietly, without cameras or announcements, he began something new. Not a foundation with his name on it, a cooperative, affordable loans, guaranteed supply, school support for traders' children. Zainab did not ask him to do it. He did not do it for redemption. He did it because he could no longer pretend he did not understand. Weeks passed. Then months. Obina did not disappear. He showed up. He learned Moreniki's favorite food. He attended her school open day, standing awkwardly at the back, pride shining quietly in his eyes. He listened when Zainab spoke. He apologized when he got things wrong. He stayed. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the street filled with soft orange light, Zainab sat beside him outside their home. "You know," she said, "I used to think love was something you waited for." "And now?" he asked. "I think it's something you build," she replied. "Brick by brick, even when it's slow." He reached for her hand. She did not pull away. "I don't want to rush you," he said. "I don't want to rewrite the past." She squeezed his fingers gently. "The past doesn't need rewriting, it just needed truth." He smiled. Months later, on a quiet evening with only close friends and family, Obina stood in a simple outfit beside Zainab. No headlines, no spectacle, just vows spoken plainly, with voices that shook not from fear, but from understanding. When Moreniki placed their joined hands together, grinning proudly, something circular closed at last. Love had come back, not as rescue, not as fantasy, but as choice. And as they stood together, transformed but grounded, one truth rang clear. Sometimes the most unexpected rescue is not the one that saves your body, but the one that finally lets your heart come home. What did Zainab and Obina's journey stir in you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might help someone else see the strength it takes to choose love, truth, and courage, even when fear is loud. If stories like this move you, follow the channel for more powerful, thrilling stories that remind us how unexpected love can heal what time tried to bury. Thank you for staying with Zainab and Obina all the way to the end.